Navigating high school today feels less like a traditional school experience and more like being a seasoned plate spinner. You've got academics on one pole, extracurriculars on another, social life wobbling precariously, family obligations, maybe a part-time job, all while trying to keep your own balance.
Absolutely.
For many students, and their parents too, the ultimate goal is high academic achievement, getting the grades, maybe aiming for those top test scores, and landing a spot in a dream college.
Right.
And it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that success is purely a function of how many hours you spend hunched over textbooks.
That singular focus on just the traditional academic grind, the memorization, the test prep, it's certainly a piece of the puzzle, but it's increasingly clear, looking at the experiences of high-achieving students and the research on what supports learning. Well, it just doesn't capture the full complex picture.
No, it really
It
doesn't.
doesn't show what makes a student not just academically successful, but truly capable and resilient in navigating those competing demands you just described.
Exactly, is a much richer landscape than just grades. And that's precisely why we're dedicating this deep dive to exploring that broader landscape. We've gathered a stack of sources that look beyond just study techniques.
Yeah, really interesting mix.
We've got articles and research reviews exploring everything from effective time management strategies and the surprising impact of physical activity and extracurriculars,
Uh-huh.
to detailed reports on the role of arts education in developing crucial non-academic skills, and even a candid firsthand account from a real student about their journey balancing it all.
Our mission here isn't to present a one-size-fits-all blueprint or like a magic bullet for guaranteeing a specific test score. That's not really what the sources point to.
No, not at all.
Instead, we're going to dive into these sources to extract and synthesize the crucial, often overlooked habits, skills, and practices that these different perspectives agree are fundamental.
Things that build that strong foundation.
Exactly. An adaptable foundation that enables students to tackle academic challenges effectively and achieve excellence across the board, whatever their specific goals might be.
We'll be looking at what these sources tell us about tackling that complex scheduling challenge. How do successful students manage all those spinning plates? We'll explore the equally vital inner game. How do you cultivate the focus, the discipline, and the emotional resilience needed not just for studying, but for navigating pressure and distraction?
Right, the internal stuff.
And we'll really dig into the perhaps surprising impact of things that happen outside the traditional classroom walls, like physical activity and getting involved in activities you're passionate about.
Yeah, that connection is fascinating.
One of our sources, referencing a student's remarkable journey to high achievement, highlighted the importance of a holistic approach, one that blends academic excellence with leadership, personal passions, and other areas.
So we're going to use these sources to truly uncover what those other areas involve and, importantly, how they contribute to that high level of success.
Let's unpack this stack of sources and see what they reveal.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, so the first thing these sources really underline is just how uniquely demanding the high school environment is today. It's fundamentally different from, say, middle school or earlier years.
Definitely. As one source puts it, as students mature, their schedules become intrinsically more intricate. It's just, well, more complicated.
It's no longer just school from 8 to 3 and then maybe some homework.
Precisely. That source highlights that students have their core academic load. The classes, the daily assignments, studying for tests, bigger projects, but layered on top of that are significant commitments.
Like what?
Well, after-school activities, which can include everything from competitive sports and debate clubs to theater rehearsals, student government. It's a huge range.
Right, and then you add social engagements with friends, family responsibilities, maybe helping out at home.
And for many, increasingly part-time jobs. That's a big one.
And Source 1 captures the core tension perfectly. It says these are all competing for their time. It feels like a zero-sum game for those 24 hours in a day.
It really does. And this often translates directly into doing more with less time, which that same source acknowledges can be stressful.
It's not just about being busy. It's about managing these conflicting demands on a limited resource, your time and energy.
And that pressure isn't just theoretical, it's a lived reality. We see it vividly reflected in the real student's account shared in one of the sources.
Oh, yeah, that was really interesting.
The student speaks very candidly about their packed schedule, participating in a bunch of extracurricular activities across all sorts of domains.
They admitted they spread themselves thin in many ways, which sounds exhausting.
It does. But, and this is a critical point they made, they also clarified that despite the demands, they loved everything that they did.
That's such a crucial insight. The activities are valuable and enjoyable. They aren't just obligations. But it's the volume of these valuable activities that creates the stress and the management challenge.
And that source explains how this student navigated the difficulty of balancing coursework and activities primarily through trial and error.
So, not a perfectly planned system from day one.
Not at all. It involved concrete consequences, like admitting there were plenty of late nights where they stretched themselves too thin.
Oof, been there.
And it was through those difficult experiences, those late nights, that they learned how much they can reasonably balance. It was learning by doing, sometimes the hard way.
Their experience really underscores a key point. High school itself, with its extremely structured daily rhythm, back-to-back classes, often followed immediately by scheduled activities, then homework, it inherently creates this difficult time management puzzle.
And that source contrasts this sharply with the college environment. They found that despite a heavy workload in college, the greater flexibility in scheduling classes and study time paradoxically made time management much easier.
That's fascinating. It suggests that the very environment of high school, with its intense structure and all those competing demands, is actually the forge where these critical time management skills are hammered out.
Often out of necessity.
Yeah, and through overcoming mistakes like those late nights, it's like a high-stakes training ground.
It really is.
And this ties back to that broader idea we started with, that academic success in this kind of pressure cooker isn't just about mastering the curriculum itself.
Exactly. The point made in that single powerful sentence in another source about a student's path to high achievement, noting it embodied a holistic approach, blending academic excellence with leadership, community service, personal passions, and strong familial support, that becomes even more significant here.
Right. It implies that performing at the very highest levels academically isn't simply a matter of being intellectually gifted or just studying longer hours than everyone else.
No, it seems to be underpinned by development and engagement in these other, seemingly non-academic areas.
It suggests that maybe focusing only on boosting grades or specific test scores in isolation, and viewing things like extracurriculars, personal interests, or even sleep as things to sacrifice, and maybe that's counterproductive.
It seems likely. It might be neglecting the very foundational skills and resilience needed to sustain that high level of academic effort and performance effectively over the long haul.
And these sources provide the detail on what some of those key, non-academic, but academically supportive areas are and how they contribute.
Yeah, the how is important.
So we'll delve into the practicalities of effective time management strategies, explore how crucial social-emotional skills, that essential inner game, are developed and applied, and examine the compelling evidence linking physical activity and involvement in extracurriculars to improved academic outcomes and cognitive function.
Okay, so let's dig into the first of these foundational areas. How to effectively manage that finite and highly contested resource, your time.
In that complex high school landscape, effective time management is just indispensable, right?
Absolutely. Source 1 provides a very clear and functional definition. It's fundamentally about organizing the work you need to do so you can get it all done in the time you have without getting too overwhelmed or overworked.
So it's about control and balance, not just cramming everything in somehow.
Precisely. And that source clarifies that this isn't a single skill you either have or don't. It's more like a cluster of interconnected abilities.
Like what?
Things like focus, organization, prioritization, and goal-oriented persistence. These are all facets of what are often called executive function skills.
Okay. Executive functions.
Yeah, those high-level cognitive processes that help us manage tasks, plan, organize, and regulate our behavior to achieve goals. And the source notes these skills, like focus and prioritization, are absolutely critical for academic success.
What's great is that the sources offer concrete, actionable strategies that students can, begin experimenting with pretty much immediately.
Right, like leveraging tools students probably already have constant access to, a calendar app on their phone.
It sounds almost too simple, maybe, but the way the source describes its use is very practical.
How so?
Well, a calendar app helps students balance after-school activities with homework time, social events, and other responsibilities. By plotting everything out visually, it can drastically help prevent scheduling conflicts.
Avoiding that dreaded moment where practice runs late and you miss a study group.
Exactly. It also helps students remember to bring any equipment or supplies they may need for specific activities scheduled on certain days, like don't forget your cleats or your presentation notes.
Makes sense.
The source even suggests experimenting with features like different color coding strategies or the task function within the app to personalize it and make it more effective for individual needs.
Yeah.
It turns the abstract concept of time into something tangible, like blocks you can arrange.
Okay, so the calendar app is one tool. Another particularly interesting strategy highlighted in that same source is called the unschedule.
The unschedule, how does that work?
It kind of flips the traditional approach on its head. Instead of starting by blocking out chunks of time for work or studying,
Yeah.
you first schedule time for essential non-work activities. The source specifies things like meals, social activities, and breaks.
Wait, so you schedule the fun stuff or the necessary life stuff before the work? That feels counterintuitive to the typical study, study, study mindset.
Exactly. It does feel counterintuitive.
Huh.
But the reasoning behind it is powerful.
Mhm.
The source explains the rationale. By scheduling relaxation, meals, and social time first, students gain a realistic idea of what they're doing with their time overall.
Okay, I see. A reality check.
Yes, and crucially, it ensures they have breaks to socialize and relax, and that they actively plan to fill their cup first with activities that help them relax.
Filling the cup first. I like that.
And the source argues that this approach can actually help reduce procrastination by helping them make the best use of their time on a daily basis.
How so?
Well, if you know a planned break is coming up, something you're looking forward to, you might be more motivated to focus intensely during the work blocks leading up to it.
Right, it gives you a target.
It shifts the perspective. Breaks aren't just earned after all the work is done. They become a necessary scheduled component that supports your ability to do the work effectively and sustainably.
That reframes the relationship with work and rest entirely.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so calendar apps, the unschedule. What about the good old to-do list? Where does that fit in?
Yes, the classic. That first source includes the to-do list as a valuable, helpful way to keep track of the tasks that need to be done in a single day. It works really well for managing smaller daily action items.
Seems straightforward.
It is. But the key, according to the source, is that while the student has flexibility in deciding the order in which they tackle items on the list, they must have enough time budgeted to get everything done.
So it's not just listing, it's budgeting time.
Exactly. It connects the simple act of listing tasks to the more complex skill of realistic time allocation.
Yeah.
You can list 10 things, but have you actually allocated the, say, 3 hours you need to do them?
And that brings us directly to prioritization, which another source, source 2, emphasizes is absolutely critical, especially when you're facing that all-too-common situation of too much to do with too little time.
This is where the rubber meets the road, definitely.
How does that source suggest approaching prioritization?
It advises taking a few minutes, particularly at the start of a study session or the beginning of the day, to consciously evaluate your priorities.
Okay, evaluate how.
It involves considering 2 key things: which deadlines are most urgent, what absolutely has to get done first, but also factoring in how much energy you have at that moment.
That energy piece is so often overlooked. You can't just schedule your hardest task for when you're totally drained after school and, like, soccer practice.
Exactly. And Source 2 offers a practical tactic here. Sometimes it's actually effective to complete simple tasks first.
Knock out the easy stuff.
Yeah, those quick emails, the easy assignments, maybe some organizational steps.
Yeah.
Get them out of the way before moving on to tasks that require a lot of focus.
What's the benefit of that?
The benefit is tangible. It can alleviate some of the pressure by checking a couple things off your to-do list early on. It gives you a sense of momentum and reduces that feeling of being completely swamped.
Like getting some quick wins.
Precisely. And prioritization isn't just about deciding what to do first. It's also about recognizing what you maybe cannot do right now.
Uh-oh. Saying no.
Source 2 makes the crucial point that when you are struggling to fit everything in your schedule, effective prioritization means you must consider what you can postpone or what you can simply say no to.
That's hard for a lot of students.
It is, but it's a skill that involves making conscious choices about your capacity. And Source 2 gives a very relatable example, understanding that true friends will completely understand if you have to meet them for coffee another time in order to get in a final library session before a challenging exam.
So learning to set boundaries and make those difficult decisions is a vital part of managing time and preventing burnout.
It really is. It's self-preservation, in a way.
That feels like a permission slip. It's okay to say no sometimes to protect your capacity. And this ties directly back to that unscheduled idea and Source two's broader point. Time management is not just about maximizing productivity.
No, that's a key theme.
Source 2 strongly emphasizes that it's also fundamentally about ensuring that you can put yourself and your mental well-being first.
This is absolutely essential for sustainability. You can't sprint indefinitely. Source 2 stresses that consistently including time for relaxation and enjoyment in your planned schedule helps to keep your mental health and your life in balance.
It's not wasted time.
Not at all. It also serves a strategic purpose during tough times, providing things to look forward to when going through stressful periods. These moments of respite aren't trivial. They're crucial for recharging.
What kind of examples did they give?
Things like going for a bike ride along the river, spending time with your friends and family, or simply sleeping in on a Sunday. These are presented not as rewards you earn after the work, but as necessary components of a healthy, manageable life that ultimately supports your academic effort.
Okay, so build in the breaks, protect your well-being. What if a student tries these strategies? The calendar, the unscheduled, the lists, prioritization, but still feels overwhelmed or struggles to stick to their plan.
That's a common challenge. Source 2 offers another angle, finding support.
Like asking for help.
Yes, it highlights the value of external accountability and support systems. It suggests actively seeking out an accountability partner or study buddies, specifically to help keep yourself and your classmates on task.
Makes sense. It's easier to stick to a plan when someone else is also working alongside you or checking in.
Definitely. It also mentions practical steps like communicating your needs, for example, reminding roommates when you need extra space to work on a paper, just to create an environment that helps you focus when you need to.
And finally, Source 2 adds a really important note about flexibility. This seems key.
It is. While structure is important, truly effective time management isn't just about sticking to a rigid schedule. It's also about giving yourself space for change.
Because life happens, right?
Exactly. Unexpected things come up, an assignment takes way longer than planned, you get sick, a family event pops up. The ability to adapt your schedule, maybe shift things around without completely abandoning the plan, that's a mark of sophisticated time management.
So for you, listening to this, whether you're a student navigating these pressures or a parent supporting one, consider which of these practical tools resonate. Could a calendar app help visualize the chaos?
Or might trying the unscheduled reveal some hidden time, or maybe just the desperate need for planned breaks?
These aren't just organizational hacks, they are skills. Source 1 explicitly links them to those critical executive function skills: focus, organization, prioritization, persistence.
And notes, they aren't usually taught in the classroom, but are skills that can be taught, learned, and applied for success. Source 1 even suggests that for some students, developing these skills might benefit from dedicated one-on-one coaching.
This entire section really underscores that building the scaffolding to manage your time is a fundamental foundational step toward academic achievement.
Absolutely foundational.
Okay, so we've talked about managing the external structure of your time, but success also requires managing the internal landscape, your focus, your emotions, your discipline.
The inner game.
Exactly. This brings us to social-emotional skills, often discussed under the umbrella of SEL, social-emotional learning. Source 3 highlights that SEL is an increasing focus in education.
Yeah, you hear that term a lot more now.
And it reflects a broader interest in students' development of individual and interpersonal skills beyond the realm of academic achievement. It's acknowledging that there's more to a successful young person than their test scores.
Absolutely. Source 3 poses questions that get right to the heart of why SEL matters beyond just academics. Are students good and kind people? Are they contributing members of their families and communities? Are they able to set goals and pursue their dreams? Are they productive, helpful people? These are big life outcomes.
But crucially for our topic today, Source 3 also links SEL directly to skills that impact academic engagement and performance.
Like what specifically?
Like empathy, social responsibility, critical thinking, and the ability to communicate across differences, things you definitely need in school and beyond.
And within the context of learning itself, Source 3 emphasizes that the process of student learning is inextricably social and emotional. Your feelings, your relationships, they're not separate from your ability to learn.
That makes sense. If you're feeling anxious or disconnected, it's hard to focus.
Right. And Source 3 even notes specifically that feeling motivated is key to self-management. If you're not feeling it emotionally, it's hard to make yourself do the work.
So if these inner skills are so vital, how do students develop them? This is where it gets really interesting. Source 3 makes a very strong research-backed case that arts disciplines are powerful vehicles for this kind of development.
Arts, like music, theater, painting.
Exactly. We're talking music, dance, theater, visual arts, literary arts, media arts, the whole spectrum. Source 3 argues that arts education provides a wide range of opportunities for social emotional experiences, as well as developing social emotional competencies.
Okay, so engaging in art helps you build these inner skills. How?
It identifies three primary SEL domains that are particularly exercised and developed through the practice of art forms. First, self-management and discipline.
Okay.
Second, interpersonal and relationship skills.
Mm-hmm.
And third, self-expression and identity.
Got it. Self-management, relationship, self-expression.
And Source 3 makes a key distinction here. While just engaging in the arts can inherently offer these opportunities,
Yeah.
the potential for positive social-emotional impact is significantly amplified when educators intentionally and consciously helping students take advantage of the opportunities.
Ah, so it's not just accidental. It works best when it's purposeful, when the teacher's helping students connect the dots between the art and these skills.
Precisely. Intentionality is key.
Let's focus on the first domain then, self-management and discipline. How does art help with that?
Source 3 defines this as the skills students require to take responsibility for their own behavior and well-being and to pursue the goals that they set. It involves the ability to recognize, own, and be able to direct one's own emotions, behaviors, and attention toward one's desired purposes.
Okay, so managing yourself, staying focused, directing your energy. This directly overlaps with the focus and attention components of executive functions we discussed earlier with time management.
Exactly. And Source 3 gives a truly illuminating example of this with Monique, a middle school piano student, and her teacher, Angela. Monique was preparing for a recital, and the pressure brought up significant anxiety issues.
Performance anxiety. Very common. How did the teacher handle it?
Angela didn't just ignore the anxiety or tell Monique to toughen up or deal with it. Source 3 details her intentional, supportive approach. First, she normalized Monique's anxiety, sharing that all musicians face this challenge.
That's huge, just knowing you're not alone or flawed.
Right. Then they worked on visualizing worst-case scenarios, like completely blanking out or walking off stage and processing the reality that even if the worst happened, the earth is still turning and nobody really talks about it afterward as much as you fear.
Decatastrophizing it. Smart.
Yeah. Angela also provided Monique with concrete, portable tools like breathing and mindfulness practices she could use right there in the moment of performance stress.
Giving her actual strategies.
But the most powerful part of this story, for me, is how Angela helped Monique transfer a coping strategy she already used in another domain.
Transfer.
Source 3 explains that Angela discussed a strategy Monique used successfully in basketball, getting inside the game, and helped her translate that concept to music.
Interesting. What did that look like for music?
It meant focusing on the musical and technical goals of the piece, the physical posture needed for playing, attending to the melodic line, basically, focusing on the task rather than getting lost in the anxiety about audience judgment.
Shifting the focus from the fear to the process.
Exactly. And this isn't just about music lessons, it's a practical lesson in applied self-management under pressure. The outcome described in Source 3 is remarkable.
What happened at the recital?
On recital day, another student had severe anxiety and actually ran off stage right before Monique was supposed to play.
Oh, wow. That could trigger her own anxiety even more.
You'd think so, but Monique felt a surge of empathy for the other student, and that act of connecting with another's struggle somehow helped her activate her own learned coping strategies. She went on and gave a successful performance.
Amazing. So the arts environment provided a safe space to practice dealing with a real-world challenge anxiety and learn to apply skills dynamically.
Precisely. Another fascinating example of developing self-management, particularly around avoiding shortcuts and building persistence, comes from Sam, a student interviewed in Source 3 about his painting class.
Okay, painting this time. What did Sam find?
Sam made a really insightful comparison between the process of painting and doing math homework.
How so?
He observed directly, according to Source 3, painting you can't really have shortcuts, you have to take your time with it. He contrasted this with math, where he felt, there's always shortcuts that people find, so I don't think you have to put in as much focus as you do with painting.
Interesting perspective. So the nature of the artistic process itself, the need for patience, careful layering, deliberate strokes, inherently discourages superficial approaches.
That's what he felt. And Sam believed that this practice of taking time and doing things the right way in painting actually changed his brain.
Changed his brain. Wow.
He explained it, instilled in him the habit to take your time on it and do it correct and figure it out instead of just going through it quickly. And Source 3 connects this improved discipline directly to his feeling of ownership and pride in his artwork.
Ah, so the reward wasn't just the grade, it was the creation itself.
Exactly. He said things like, I like painting, I like bringing the artwork, showing it off. You can show your emotions through it. This sense of personal investment and accomplishment appears to have fueled Satnal's improved self-management and discipline in doing his work without seeking shortcuts. The joy of creation reinforced the value of the discipline process.
These examples really illustrate how arts practices, with their inherent requirements for focused effort, iterative refinement, overcoming technical hurdles, they provide repeated action experiences like tinkering and practicing, and reflection experiences like evaluating and connecting.
Prime opportunities to build aspects of self-management, discipline, and that goal-oriented persistence we talked about earlier.
Makes sense. Okay, what about the second domain? Self-expression and identity.
Beyond discipline, arts also serve as a powerful vehicle for self-expression, helping students explore aspects of their identity and express emotions, especially emotions that might not get much airtime in other, more structured parts of the school day.
So a safe space to figure out who you are and what you feel.
Yeah. And this exploration through the arts can be transformative. It can lead students to identify as an artist or a creative person, seeing themselves in a completely new light.
Building a positive identity.
Source 3 shares a beautiful little anecdote about a student who simply made a tiny pincushion. It was a small project, but the feeling it evoked was huge.
Really? A pincushion.
Yeah. She said, I was so happy. I was really proud of myself. She quoted herself thinking, wow, I did this. I didn't know how to do this, but now I do.
That feeling of accomplishment is powerful.
Totally. Source 3 highlights how this kind of experience really does build confidence. The act of creating something from scratch, even something small, and succeeding builds self-efficacy, that belief in your own capability. And that can spill over into other areas, including academics.
I can see that. Believing you can do things.
Another poignant example involves students writing lyrics about difficult community issues, like immigration, in a literary arts class. Source 3 notes that this format allowed them to feel more comfortable expressing their previously unspoken ideas and fears,
Using art to process tough stuff.
and engage deeply with their own identities and how they fit within their communities. It wasn't just an assignment, it was personal exploration.
And when these expressions are shared, they can build connection. Source 3 quotes one student who shared their lyrics with someone else. It made me feel good. I shared my lyrics and you shared your skill with me, and we both understood each other's way of living.
Wow, that's powerful. Mutual understanding through shared art.
Source 3 describes this sharing and understanding as part of an iterative and interlocking process that allows participants to practice, build, and expand their artistic, personal, and interpersonal repertoire. It shows how self-expression in a supportive environment fosters connection and understanding, which are vital interpersonal skills.
Which brings us neatly to the third SEL domain fostered by the arts: interpersonal and relationship skills.
Right, working with others.
Source 3 points out that arts education naturally provides tons of opportunities for collaboration and building social skills, citing obvious examples like being part of a theater production or a member of an orchestra. You can't really do those things alone.
True. The theater production example in Source 3 offers a really deep dive into how collaborative arts build community and social skills.
What did it highlight?
Students felt they were entering a whole nother world, where the adult leaders consciously cultivated a specific culture. This culture involved high expectations for a commitment to the work. So, discipline and responsibility were key, and importantly, that commitment was openly celebrated.
So high standards, but also positive reinforcement.
Exactly. It also sounds like they built a very safe emotional environment. Source 3 notes the adult leaders intentionally recognized, accepted, and even modeled strong emotions in constructive ways. They didn't shy away from feelings.
It's important.
And they established a culture of emotional support. They consciously encouraged the entire cast and crew to be respectful and supportive of one another.
So it wasn't just about putting on a play, it was explicitly practicing teamwork, learning to navigate group dynamics, giving and receiving support, and managing your own emotions while collaborating closely with others, often under pressure.
You got it. Intense social skill practice.
So for you, the listener, if you're looking for ways to build that inner game, the self-discipline, the resilience to handle anxiety, the confidence to express yourself, the ability to work with others, consider actively seeking out arts experiences.
Whether it's a school club, community classes, or even self-directed projects at home.
The sources suggest these can be powerful contexts for developing these critical SEL skills. And as Source 3 points out, these experiences can even shift how adults perceive a child's potential, moving away from focusing on perceived weaknesses to recognizing emerging strength.
These aren't just soft skills. They are fundamental capabilities that underpin success in academics and pretty much everything else in life.
Building on that theme of leveraging different types of activities for development, our sources also present compelling evidence for the significant impact of physical activity and extracurricular involvement on academic performance.
Yeah, this is where the mind-body connection for academic outcomes is really solidified by the research. Both Source 6 and Source 7 point to robust evidence linking physical activity to various aspects of academic performance.
And Source 7, which was a review of studies by the CDC, highlights the existing recommendation for youth aged 6-17 to get at least 60 minutes of physical activity daily.
Right, for multiple health benefits.
And it specifically notes that schools are a unique venue for youth to meet the activity recommendations.
Which makes sense, given how much time kids spend there.
Now, a common concern for busy students and parents might be, if I spend time exercising or doing a sport, isn't that taking away from valuable study time? Source 7 directly addresses this worry.
And the findings are actually pretty reassuring and quite powerful. The extensive review in Source 7 states unequivocally that increasing or maintaining time dedicated to physical activity will not have a negative impact on academic performance.
Okay, so it doesn't hurt.
And it may positively impact students' academic performance.
Yeah.
It specifically reiterates that increasing or maintaining time dedicated to physical education does not adversely impact academic performance.
So the evidence just does not support the idea that activity steals from academic time in a detrimental way. Phew.
Right. It's a critical piece of information for managing that packed high school schedule.
So if it doesn't hurt and might help, what kinds of positive impacts did the CDC review in Source 7 actually find?
They found positive relationships between physical activity and a whole range of outcomes. They grouped them into academic achievement, academic behaviors, and indicators of cognitive skills and attitudes.
So that covers grades, how students act in school, and how they think.
Pretty much, yeah. It covers both how well students perform on tests and grades, and also how they approach learning and manage their own thinking processes.
Let's break down the cognitive benefits mentioned in Source 7. What specific mental skills and attitudes are positively affected by physical activity?
Okay, Source 7 lists specific examples like concentration, memory, self-esteem, and verbal skills.
Those are clearly fundamental to learning and doing well academically.
Concentration and memory, definitely.
Source 7 also mentions the potential physiological pathways linking physical activity to these benefits, basically, how it helps the brain work better.
Like what?
Changes in brain function related to improved attention, improved information processing, storage, and retrieval, enhanced coping.
Yeah.
So handling stress better and enhanced positive affect. This just means a better mood.
So physical activity helps create a brain state that is more conducive to focusing, learning, remembering, handling stress, and maintaining a positive attitude towards challenging work. That sounds pretty good for academics, doesn't it? And beyond just cognitive abilities, how does physical activity impact academic behaviors, the things students actually do in the classroom or while studying?
Oh, good question.
Source 7 mentions positive associations with enhanced concentration and attention, as well as improved classroom behavior. Fewer disruptions, more focus.
Okay. What else?
Other academic behaviors that were measured in the studies reviewed and showed positive links included on-task behavior, attendance, organization, planning, scheduling, impulse control, and general conduct.
It makes sense if physical activity improves your focus, your mood, and your ability to cope with stress. You're likely to be more present, better behaved, and more organized when it comes to schoolwork.
Exactly, it all connects.
Now, the Source 7 review looked at physical activity in different school contexts, right? Like traditional PE classes, recess, short activity breaks in the classroom, and extracurricular activities like sports. Were there differences in the strength of the associations?
Yes, there were some nuances. While PE, recess, and classroom activity breaks generally showed positive or neutral relationships, meaning they didn't hurt academic outcomes, and often helps with things like attention and behavior.
Okay.
The studies on extracurricular physical activities, think school sports teams, Intramural leagues or even physically active clubs or after-school programs showed the strongest and most consistently positive associations with academic performance overall.
Ah, so getting involved in sports or active clubs outside of regular class time had the biggest link.
That's what the review indicated, yes.
Yeah.
Across the many associations measured between extracurricular physical activity and academic outcomes, nearly all were either positive, 52%, or neutral, 46%. Very few negative links were found.
Wow. So it's a very low risk for negative impact and a high likelihood of positive impact, especially with those extracurriculars. That's a really powerful finding.
It is indeed.
What specific academic achievement measures were most often linked positively to extracurricular physical activity in that Source 7 review?
Well, Source 7 notes that grade point average was positively associated with extracurricular physical activity 12 of the 22 times it was measured. That's pretty significant.
More often than not, higher GPA linked to playing sports or similar activities.
Right. Participation in these activities was also linked to highly significant outcomes, like decreased high school dropout rates that came up in 2 specific studies they cited, and also fostering educational aspirations, basically making students more likely to want to pursue higher education.
And some studies also found positive associations with academic achievement test scores.
Yes, that was mentioned too, though the GPA links seem more consistently measured in the studies they reviewed.
Okay, so GPA, staying in school, aiming higher. What about other benefits beyond grades?
Beyond GPA and graduation rates, Source 7 highlights a whole range of other positive outcomes associated with extracurricular physical activity. Things like maintaining interest in class, encouraging homework completion.
Behaviors that lead to better grades.
Exactly. Also, positive links to academic self-concept, believing in your academic abilities, a stronger internal locus of control, which means feeling like you have control over your outcomes.
Feeling empowered.
Positive academic attitudes, increased school value and attachment, liking school more, and enhanced resiliency, bouncing back from challenges.
These are all crucial components of sustained academic success and just overall well-being during those tough high school years.
Couldn't agree more.
And this research from Source 7 aligns so well with the real student story in Source 4, which we discussed earlier in the context of balancing commitments. Remember, that student wasn't just doing extracurriculars passively. They were deeply involved in athletics, specifically cross-country and track.
Exactly. And the student explicitly stated that their involvement in these sports taught them discipline in a way that few other activities could.
Discipline again.
Yeah, and they also felt it provided them with fundamental life tools. This firsthand account just perfectly mirrors the research findings about the link between physical activity, especially in a structured extracurricular context like sports, and the development of discipline, persistence, and other valuable life skills that definitely support academic work.
And remember, the student in Source 4 was also involved in a variety of other extracurriculars beyond sports, like peer leadership, Latin tutoring.
Right, service and academic enrichment.
Publications like the newspaper and literary magazine editor.
Arts and literary skills.
And music, like choir and a cappella.
A really broad range.
Yeah.
And they specifically mentioned the skills they gained from these different activities. They talked about teamwork skills from athletics and collaborative groups, familiarity with writing at a higher level from their publications work, which is a direct academic link, and musical skills from choir. These were concrete examples of how engaging in diverse physical and extracurricular activities builds a range of abilities, leadership, communication, collaboration, specific talents
that contribute to overall development and directly support academic life, just as the research in Source 7 suggests these activities impact academic behaviors and cognitive skills.
It all fits together. These activities clearly represent the personal passions, leadership, and community service components mentioned in that holistic approach to high achievement we saw in Source 5.
So the clear takeaway here, supported by both research and personal experience from the sources, is that physical activity and participation in enriching extracurriculars shouldn't be viewed as optional add-ons or, worse, things that detract from academics.
Not at all. Based on sources 6 and 7, they are valuable, evidence-backed components of a strategy for enhancing cognitive function, improving academic behaviors, building resilience, and contributing to overall academic success and personal development.
Source 7 recommends that schools prioritize providing comprehensive physical activity programs,
including PE, recess, activity breaks, clubs, sports.
And for students and parents, it's a strong signal to intentionally include and protect time for these activities, recognizing their contribution to building a strong foundation for learning and achievement. Don't cut the sports or the arts thinking it'll magically free up more effective study time.
It might actually do the opposite in the long run.
Okay, so bringing all of these insights from this stack of sources together, a very clear and I think really powerful picture emerges. High academic achievement in the complex, demanding world of high school isn't simply a result of inherent intelligence or how many hours a student spends solely focused on memorizing facts and practicing problems from textbooks.
No, it's definitely a much more nuanced, multifaceted endeavor. The sources collectively show us that academic success is significantly supported and perhaps even enabled by the cultivation of a robust set of skills, habits, and engagements that span different areas of a student's life.
Extending well beyond the traditional academic curriculum.
Right. We've identified 3 key pillars of this broader foundation, directly supported by the evidence and perspectives in our sources. First, the essential skill of effective time management.
Pillar 1, the scaffolding.
Exactly. This is the scaffolding necessary to organize and navigate the inherently complex demands of a high school schedule. It helps reduce overwhelm and ensures that time is allocated not just for academic tasks, but crucially for rest, well-being, and other vital activities.
And it actively requires and strengthens those executive function skills like organization, planning, and prioritization.
Pillar 2, the cultivation of strong social-emotional skills.
The inner operating system.
That's a great way to put it. This is the critical inner operating system that allows students to manage themselves and interact effectively with the world around them. Developing self-management and discipline provides the ability to focus attention, persist through challenges, regulate behavior, and handle stress and anxiety.
Which we saw develop through things like the arts examples.
Fostering self-expression and a strong sense of identity builds confidence and a sense of purpose. And developing interpersonal skills enables effective collaboration, communication, and the ability to build supportive relationships, which are key for learning and well-being. These emotional and social aspects are deeply intertwined with the learning process itself.
Okay. And pillar 3.
Pillar 3. Actively leveraging the benefits of physical activity and extracurriculars.
Not just optional fun.
Definitely not. The evidence strongly suggests that these activities are not mere diversions. They provide tangible benefits to cognitive function, enhancing attention and memory. They improve academic behaviors like attendance, on-task focus, and homework completion. And they boost overall psychological well-being, including self-esteem and mood, all of which create a significantly more fertile ground for academic learning and performance.
Plus, they're powerful contexts for building discipline, teamwork, leadership, and a stronger sense of attachment to school and positive attitudes towards learning.
Exactly. Building those life skills alongside the physical and cognitive benefits.
So when you look at these 3 pillars together, time management, sell-in, game, and activity engagement, you really see the tangible components of that holistic approach to high achievement mentioned in Source 5.
It starts to make concrete sense.
Success isn't simply achieved through academic study in isolation. It's achieved by intentionally blending dedicated academic effort with development in these crucial non-academic but academically supportive areas.
It's about building capacity and managing your resources, like time.
Mastering your internal state, emotions, focus, discipline.
And leveraging the energy and skills gained from engaging with the world through your body and your passions.
So what does this all mean in practical terms for you, the listener, whether you're a student trying to navigate this or a parent trying to help?
Based on the strategies and evidence in these sources, there are definitely concrete steps you can take. For students, actively experiment with and commit to using time management tools. Really try that calendar app. Test out the unscheduled approach to prioritize your well-being. Use to-do lists strategically.
Find what works for you and practice prioritization daily. That includes the challenging but necessary skill of learning to say no or postpone commitments when your plate is full. Recognizing your limits is actually a strength, not a weakness.
That's such an important mindset shift. And critically, intentionally schedule and protect time for rest, fun, and activities that genuinely recharge your mental and emotional batteries. Don't let them be the first thing you cut when you feel stressed.
Students can also proactively seek out activities, be it arts classes, sports teams, debate club, volunteering, whatever resonates, that provide intentional opportunities to build those vital self-management skills, like discipline, persistence, and coping with anxiety.
Look for contexts that foster confidence, self-expression, and the ability to collaborate effectively. These activities are developmental powerhouses, not just lines on a college application.
And don't underestimate the value of finding and utilizing support systems, like study buddies or friends you can be accountable to, like Source 2 mentioned.
For parents, these sources suggest you can play a vital supporting role. Help your students explore and implement time management strategies without taking over the process. Guide them to find what works for them.
Be a coach, not a dictator.
Exactly. Actively encourage and support their participation in extracurriculars and physical activities, viewing them not as drains on academic time, but as investments in the skills and well-being that underpin academic success.
And if a student is really struggling with foundational skills like organization or focus, maybe consider whether support like coaching focused on executive function skills might be beneficial, as Source 1 suggested.
Remember, these aren't instant fixes. The real student in Source 4 learned balance through trial and error, and Source 1 highlights that skills like persistence are key. Source 3 emphasizes that the developmental benefits from activities like arts are maximized with intentionality, approaching them not just as hobbies, but as contexts for growth.
Building this holistic